is a moment that so many of us have been waiting for, and that's our keynote. Today, we are honored to introduce the one, maybe the only one we care about in this community, our keynote speaker today, Dr. Ian Roberts. Dr. Roberts is the 15th superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools, and that was effective in July of 2023. Dr. Roberts is a career educator with over 2 decades of experience as a classroom teacher, a school administrator, and an executive leader. An accomplished author and speaker, Dr. Roberts has written numerous of books and is in many publications about educational and topics including leadership, empathy, and cultural responsiveness. Don't those things kind of go together? Leadership, empathy, cultural responsiveness.
Absolutely.
That sounds good in our schools, huh? Dr. Roberts came to Des Moines after serving as superintendent of the Mill Creek Township in Pennsylvania in that school district for 3 years, where his focus was cultural responsiveness, quality and equity-based instructional leadership that prepared every student for college or career. Prior to that, he served as the St. Louis Public Schools High School Network Superintendent, where he coached, supported, and evaluated middle school students, high school students, and alternative school principals and their leadership in those schools. His educational career also includes positions in Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., South Bronx, New York, all across the country, y'all. While in our nation's capital, he was named George Washington University's 2013 D.C. Principal of the Year.
Dr. Roberts proudly shares that he was born to immigrant parents from Guyana and spent most of his formative years in Brooklyn, New York. He graduated with a BS degree from Coppin State University, earned his master's degree from St. John's University and Georgetown University, and received his doctorate in urban education leadership from Trident University.
I wonder if he's loaning out degrees.
Because he got all of them, y'all. He got all of them. He also has received several education-related certificates, including the Harvard University Improving Schools, the Art of Leadership certificate. Prior to becoming a special education teacher, principal, district leader, and leadership trainer, Dr. Roberts was a world-class and Olympic athlete, competing in track and field at the 2000 Olympic Games in Sydney, Australia, and World Championships in Japan and Spain. Not only does he have all the degrees, he's beat everybody, and he is here with us to share a very special message. So, ladies and gentlemen, please help us welcome Dr. Ian Roberts to the stage.
Thank you. My mother always reminded me that if ever I'm given an opportunity to speak at such an auspicious and celebratory event, that I should remove myself from the occasion and invoke Psalms 19:1. And so in this moment, I ask that the words of my mouth and the meditation in my heart be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, my strength, my Redeemer. To the shepherd of this house, Pastor Dr. Brian Brown, I am humbled and honored that you and the Hope+Elim congregation saw it fit to give me a moment to be here with you all and celebrate. During the few minutes that I have with you on this evening, I want to set some expectations. I'm not a pastor. You can probably tell by my funky dress. And so I'm not going to anchor my message in any ecclesiastical underpinnings, but instead, I want to share with you just a little bit about my own journey of faith and freedom and how and when I was set free to serve. And my goal and my hope is that some part of what I share with you on this evening will inspire you to continue your own faith and freedom journey and continue service. You see, the powerful dichotomy between faith and freedom, and even if you put them together, is often taken for granted. You see, we know that faith appears in the Bible and other holy books almost 400 times. And freedom is not free, y'all. Somebody paid for it. And so on this evening, I want you to remember that. You see, we take freedom for granted, but there are those who came before us that did not have the privilege or access of proclaiming that they are free. And we know this to be true. You heard from Deidre and Sakina earlier when they talk about the fact that, yes, we are free. But on this very day, precisely 160 years ago, and I want you to visualize this as I share with you and take you down memory lane, 2,000 Union soldiers, under the leadership of General Gregory Granger, on a sweltering hot day, a Texas hot day, 110-degree day, rode into Galveston, Texas, to deliver a message that was delayed 2 whole years. You see, they were getting ready to deliver a message to about 250,000 enslaved Africans. You see, the slaves had gotten word that some folks were coming to deliver a message to them. And so they gathered. And what I want you to understand is there's a story that is often undertold or untold about what happened on this very day, and that is, as they gathered, people for as far as the eyes can see, on the very first row were the enslaved women. Stay with me, y'all. You see, what we don't acknowledge often, and gentlemen, don't take this personal, but women have always been at the forefront of emancipation and liberation of our cities, our communities, and our society. And the message was delivered. You see, it was by no accident that they had women who stood at the forefront. It was by design. You see, because the slaves were astute and brilliant and smart enough to understand, even though they were underestimated and not emancipated, they had the intellectual horsepower to be perceptive and strategic enough to say, if we have the women receive this message first and then deliver it to everyone else, we are guaranteed that it's going to be delivered with eloquence, sophistication, finesse, and inspiration. And that's what they did. We know that the Bible also tells us that even men who are powerful, inspirational, and effective have had encounters with women that also change and inspire their lives and their journey of service. John 4:1 reminds us, Jesus on his way from Galilee to Samaria met the woman where? Pastor Brown, only but 4 people responded. We need Bible study. You see, where I'm going with this is simply this. When I think about freedom, I had this epiphany where I equate freedom to running water that we have access to. You see, remember the word tells us that when Jesus asked this woman who was from a very different background for a drink of water, she had a lot of questions. Well, man, those of you who are married, you know that having a lot of questions is not something new, but I digress. And one of the things that Jesus said to her, as you recall, is, in exchange for the water that you may give to me, or anyone else who drinks this Jacob's water from the well, they will thirst again. But I know a man, and if you drink of this water, you will never, ever, ever thirst again. You see, freedom, the kind of freedom that we have and we are enjoying right now, that our ancestors paid for, it's like that water that will guarantee you never thirst again. You see, those who've paid and paved the way will guarantee that in spite of what is happening today, since January 20th of 2025, we will never be enslaved people again. You see, the freedom that we are enjoying today, and I think about it, and it's analogous to just the sacrifices that those who've come before us have made. We've seen Jesus' Father made the same sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice. John 3:16 reminds us that because he so loves the world, he gives in an ultimate way. You see, there are ancestors who have toiled in cotton fields and sugar plantations and coconut farms and rice fields just so that we can enjoy the freedoms we have today. You see, my journey of faith, freedom, and being set free to serve was also inspired by a woman. You see, many of us, as a matter of fact, I can guarantee you one thing, and I don't have too many guarantees, but the one guarantee that I'll share with you today is this. Every single person whose ear hears my voice in this sanctuary, your very first and probably one of your most significant encounters was with a woman. Stay with me. You see, somewhere in that gestational period between conception and birth, and shortly thereafter, you had this encounter with a woman. And you see, mine started when my mother, Verna, who lives in Brooklyn, New York, and she tells me the story a few years ago, and she said, you know, I was 7 months pregnant with you. And I went for my regular checkups. And the doctor looked at the sonogram, and he did whatever he needed to do medically, and he looked me in the eye, and he said to me, I need to induce labor within the next 24 hours. And she said in protest, well, doctor, I am barely past 7 months. He said, Mrs. Roberts, I'm the expert. How many of y'all have heard that before? I know you're challenging some of your bosses right now. And he said, you need to go home and pack your bags, and I need to see you within 24 hours so that I can induce labor. She said, I don't think I want to do that. He said, let me tell you something. If you do not follow my instructions, this baby boy will be born with a serious physical impairment. One of two things will happen. He will never be able to walk because of where the umbilical cord is wrapped around his legs, or you're even risking death at birth. You heard the bio. The same person who was not going to be able to walk, I've competed in track and field in 6 of 7 continents. This is not a braggadocio moment. This is a testimony. I've been ranked as the 8th fastest time in the world at one point in my life. A doctor looked my mother in the eye and said, he may never be able to walk. You see, but my mother, her faith, that mustard seed faith that we read about and talk about, that's where my journey started. She showed me from the inception what it means to have faith, because as she left Dr. Bacchus's office and she went home and she started to pack her bags, because although she has faith, she's also obedient. And the two are not mutually exclusive. And as she's packing her bag, the story is told she calls on her two sisters, my aunts, and she gave them the news, and they rushed over and they helped her to pack her bags. And just before they walked out of the door, she said, wait, give me a minute. And she went into the bedroom, and my aunts tell me the story that they sat there and 5 minutes went by and she did not come out. And then 10 minutes turned into 30 minutes. And they became worried, and they went in and knocked on the door, and she said, give me a minute. And an hour later, she walks outside, and then she starts to unpack her bag, and they grab her hand and say, what are you doing? She said, I just spent an hour in my prayer closet. And I know what Dr. Bacchus said, but I know a man. See, my mother, after stepping out of that closet, decided she needed a second opinion. And she did. My mother continues to serve as an amazing inspiration to me because her life has been about faith. Her life has been about service. And it's one of the reasons that I'm here today. I am proud to serve as the 15th superintendent of Des Moines Public Schools. Hey, choir. You know, I had a storied journey as an educator. I spent 3 years as superintendent of one of Pennsylvania's highest performing school systems. At the end of my third year of a 5-year contract, a friend reached out to me and said, hey, there's a job in Des Moines, Iowa, I want you to apply for. I said, excuse me, Des Moines who? Don't judge me, y'all. He said, Ian, no, I know what you're thinking. I said, you don't know what I'm thinking. I said, I'm at the end of year 3. It's a 5-year contract. Scores are through the roof. You know, 90% of kids are going on to college. I'm having a good time. He said, I just want you to interview because you haven't interviewed in about 3 years, and I just want you to interview so that you get some practice, because in 2 years, you're probably going to want to interview again. I respect Stuart, older gentleman, a mentor, so I decided, okay, I'm going to go through the process. And the very first interview was virtual. My first encounter with 7 women on the Des Moines Public Schools Board. Really good conversation. And I thought, okay, this is good. Stuart, I'm done. He said, no. I think they want to invite you to come out to Des Moines. I said, Des Moines, Iowa? He said, yes. I said, Stuart, you know, this is May. I just wrapped up my school year in Pennsylvania. He said, just go, man. Just go interview. I said, all right. I'll do it. I hopped in a plane, and I landed at Des Moines International Airport. Wait a minute, folks. Y'all judging. Y'all see our expansion, right? So we're really international. And I remember arriving one day earlier, and culturally, we know that if you ever want to get a scoop about what is happening in the community, you go to the barbershop or the hairdresser, or you come to the church. And so I remember, my very first time when I drove on, down University Avenue, got a shape up, Googled where some schools are, and I stopped by Roosevelt High School, the very first school. And I just randomly got out of my car and I saw some of the students were standing outside and I walked up to them and started a conversation. And I know they were probably like, who is this dude dressed to the nines just trying to talk to me? And I asked the students a couple of questions, so they had so much pride in their school. And then I left and I drove over to East High School and I did this. Where's Scarlett? Had a conversation with students and I became even more intrigued. And now I was excited about my interview the next day. And I did. Showed up in person, 7 women. I believe at the time there were 5 candidates remaining. I interviewed. 3 or 4 days later, I'm back in Pennsylvania, and I got a call from Stuart and the executive search firm that the board wanted to interview me again one more time virtually. And this was on a Saturday morning. What I need to share is that I had flown here to Des Moines twice for 2 different interviews in person. And after the final interview, they wanted to talk to me again on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. I said, this is how Iowans are? My goodness. But I interviewed. I have to tell you, after my final interview, I walked out of that interview because there were 7 board members there. But there was a woman whose manner of asking me questions, the deep, caring gaze in my eyes as we interacted, it was clear that she was revered by those in the room, and her voice was so soft but powerful, made me walk out of there saying, Lord, I want to work for that board, but more importantly, I want to work for that woman. Her name is Terry Caldwell Johnson. So I got the call about a week later with an offer to become Des Moines' next superintendent. And I have a dilemma. I had just closed out my school year and I'd shared with my team and students in the community that I'm returning. But I could not pass up on this opportunity. And so I reached out to my current board and I told them on a Saturday, and the board president asked to meet with me on a Sunday morning. And we met. He said, what happened? I said, what do you mean? He said, is there something that we did? I said, no. He said, I thought you're only at year 3. We are doing amazing work. We are nationally ranked in so many different indicators. I said, I know. He said, can I convene an emergency board meeting next week with the entire board so that we can really understand what is happening? I said, absolutely. And I met with the entire board, and they had a lot of questions. And I'm sitting there, and they said, is it money? I said, no. I said, we can give you more money. What do you want? Is it something that someone in the community did? I said, no. What happened? And I looked them in the eye, and I said, I met a woman. I moved to Iowa to pursue this journey of service. Really feeling set free to serve because of the interactions that I had along the way. And I arrived on July 1 of 2023. Terry reached out to me to make sure that I had arrived and I was doing well. And she said she wanted to meet in the next 2 to 3 days. And so we met, I think just after July 4th, for coffee. And she walked into the coffee shop, sparkling silver hair, shoulders square, like the whole place fell silent when she walked through the door. And I'm sitting there like, man, I can't wait to work for her. And we sat down for coffee and we made small talk. And about 30 minutes in, she said, Ian, I'm looking forward to working with you for the next several years as we improve the Moines Public Schools. She said, but I want to tell you that I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And immediately, without missing a beat, she said, but guess what? My faith is strong. She said, Ian, I'm going to beat this thing. And if you know me, you'll know that I'm never, ever dumbfounded, but I had no words. And we continued the conversation. And after about an hour, hour and a half, we decided to part ways. And she said, so what are you going to get into now? I said, I'm going to drive by a couple of the schools. I think there's some leaders who are in schools, and I'm going to meet with them, and we're going to talk. So what about you? She says, well, I'm 2 blocks from my hairdresser. A girl has got to look good. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, you just shared with me one of the most challenging news that anyone can receive, and now you're talking about a girl that's got to look good? And as she walked away, I stood in silence for a very long time. And if you followed the Moines Public Schools journey, you know that during Terry's battle, she never missed a board meeting, even when she moved virtually as her body was succumbing to cancer. And when you hear her voice on those virtual meetings, if you had not known that she was fighting this diagnosis, you can tell. Powerful, inspiring, game-changing. Then one night I'm at a school event and I got a call. And a woman introduced herself as Terry's best friend of 45 years. And she said, Terry is in hospice. And she wants to see you tomorrow morning, Saturday, at a Kavanaugh house. And I hung up the phone. I went to my car. And I held the steering wheel and I said, Lord, are you gonna forgive me if I don't show up tomorrow? I've never been to hospice to see anyone. And I know that I'm strong, and but I don't think I can handle that. And the next morning I woke up and he guided my steps and I went to visit, and I walked into the facility and I saw Vernon, her husband, and her children and extended family, and they were all there. And Vernon came up to me and he escorted me into Terry's space, and I walked in there and he and the nurse left me there, and I kept thinking to myself, you know what, Ian, you can do this. This is going to be a 10-minute conversation, then you're out of here, because I'm so nervous. I don't know what to do. And Vernon said, are you okay to Terry? She says, yes. Voice still is powerful. And he walked out and he said, I'm going to leave you all alone. Almost 2 hours later, she never once mentioned her illness. She asked me a total of 7 times, how can she help me? She said, Ian, you are here to serve. She messed me up, y'all. She said, Ian, I've prayed for you. She said, this community has prayed for you. 116 years of existence. And I want to tell you, Ian, it's not going to be easy. But if you hold on to the faith that I kept telling you that I have, and just lead, it's going to be all right. Terry Caldwell Johnson. I met a woman who inspired my journey to hold on to faith, and who reminded me that I had been set free to serve. And so here I am in Des Moines, Iowa, just completed my second year. And I have to tell you, while I'm enjoying the work, we're disrupting systems that has not served all of our students for 118 years. We are getting ready to reimagine education, to prepare our schools and our programs to get us back to that place of preeminence we once had. About 4 days ago, I received our state assessment scores. They're only preliminary, but in 7 of the 9 tested areas in English language arts, we have scored very high, only 2 that are negative. In science, every single grade level has increased their scores significantly. In math, 4 of 5 grade levels have increased significantly. I'm sharing this because while we are not where we want to be, there's no doubt in my mind that with the community's support as we embark upon this reimagined education journey, we're going to prepare a school system that benefits not only our children, but our children's children. Because there's a Greek proverb that says, a community and a society grows stronger when men and women plant trees in whose shades they know they'll never be able to sit. And we are planting those trees now and today. You see, cancer, like slavery, takes your breath away. It disrupts families. It oppresses every person that it impacts. And although cancer took Terry from earth, the work that she is doing now and has left me to do, and the rest of the 5,000 employees and 7 board members of the Des Moines Public Schools and this entire community, is one that is anchored in faith. And she wants us to continue serving. But here's what I want to leave you with. It is very clear to me that at some point, Terry was tired of fighting. I had a conversation with Vernon Johnson, her husband, recently. I know he's not here, but he wouldn't mind me sharing this. And he looked me in the eye and he said, Ian, while we've spoken on the phone since Terry's passing, I did not want to tell you this on the phone. I wanted to tell you in person. When you walked out of that room when Terry was in hospice, although she lived for several days after that, she never spoke another word. He said, you were the... He said, you heard the last of her voice. Terry was tired. While you're holding on to your faith, beloved, I want you to know that you too will get tired. But the Bible tells us, be not weary in well-doing. Ancestors have gotten tired, and they kept going. I'll leave you with this. April 4th, 1968. You know the story. On the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, Dr. King, who was someone who clearly was tired. He turned to his friend and saxophonist, Ben Branch, and he looked Ben in the eye and he said, Ben, I'm tired, but I want you to play a song for me. I want you to play the song by my favorite gospel artist, Mahalia Jackson. He said, Ben, I want you to play it nice and slow. I feel like this often. It's my mom's favorite artist as well. I told you I'm not a preacher, my disclaimer, my second disclaimer, quiet, don't judge me. I'm not a singer either. But the Spirit tells me, as I channel the tiredness of those who've come before us and they kept going, precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I'm tired, I'm weak, I'm worn. Through the storm, through the night, lead me on through the light. Take my hand. To freedom. Thank you, Hope+Elim.